So I just want to start off by saying thank you so much, Nadir, for joining us today for the pre-webinar for the unscripted track for Open SV. My name is Nabiha Shahid, and I'm one of the student interview leads for the unscripted track that's going to be happening on November 8th at Open Silicon Valley's annual forum at the Santa Clara Convention Center. So I'm going to start off by saying kind of a little bit about what the unscripted session is. I'm sure the team has already texted you prior to this. So obviously, all of us like seeing you on stage giving an amazing keynote, and then poof, you're gone before we can even have a real conversation. And trust me, we all kind of want a moment to sit down and say, okay, we love the journey, love the insight, but how did you actually do all of that? So that's kind of the whole vision behind the unscripted. There's no stage barriers, no one direction lectures. It's just kind of real coffee chat of where students and professionals can have a genuine conversation about the innovators of Silicon Valley. So I promise there are no trick questions unless you consider how do you balance work and life in tech, because no one's quite cracked that yet. So
Mhm.
let's start from the beginning. So who was Nadir then? Who is Nadir now? And how did you get there? Tell us about your journey.
Sure. So I guess I'll start. I'm originally from Pakistan, from Karachi. So I grew up in Karachi, and I was there till I was 18. And then I guess left when I was 18 to go to college at MIT in Boston. So
MashaAllah.
that was definitely like a huge step and a huge journey. And you could say that was an eye-opening experience to start off there. So
Definitely.
I could kind of say that the journey started there, to Silicon Valley. And so I did 5 years at MIT, did my bachelor's and master's in electrical engineering. And I think that kind of set the tone for my career in some ways, although it doesn't have to be that way for everyone. But for me, I came into this field of what's called semiconductors, chip design. And I kind of was lucky then that there were a couple of professors who took an interest in me and kind of gave me a chance to sort of do some research there and kind of learn about this field and kind of like a no stress, like no fault kind of environment. And that just
Yeah,
kind of got my interest going. So, sometimes you need those mentors. In fact, I think a lot of times you need those mentors who help you, who give you, the chance to sort of learn and to grow and to guide you in the right path. So that definitely happened with me at MIT. So I got that chance. So this is outside of just the classes. It's the research and the work that I did with the professors there. So that really got me interested in this industry of chip design. And this was back in the late 90s. So after I graduated, I worked for a company called Digital, which back then no longer exists, but back then it was a chip maker, just like Intel, and was making one of the fastest chips in the market at the time. So that was kind of my first entry into this domain of chip design, which is what I do now. And that was sort of a wonderful experience where I really got to work and see the innards of the entire process from design to manufacturing. And again, got lucky with some great mentors at my job who kind of gave me the opportunity to take ownership of certain things, learn about things. So sometimes you definitely need to find that environment which will allow you to grow and learn. So I think that
definitely.
was very pivotal for the early years of my life, my working career. And then after that, then the journey began here to Silicon Valley, which, as we know, at the time was going through this dot-com boom. So
Yeah,
everyone wanted to be
yeah.
here, right? So that was the fun thing. And funnily enough, when I got here, it was beginning of '99, so it was right at the peak, and I thought, hey, I'm just going to ride the wave. And 6 months later, it all crashed. So so there was my first introduction to the real world, how it really works. Things not always going to
Definitely,
proceed in a
definitely.
linear way. So what do you do then? But luckily, this field of chip design, while it's gone through its waves, it's always kind of had a core kind of demand, and as you can see, it's booming again now. So from then on, basically, I worked in this space called electronic design automation, which is essentially an interface between hardware and software. So you're essentially creating software which designs hardware, which is chips. So you kind of sort of intersecting, straddling both worlds of software and hardware. So that's kind of
Yeah,
where my personal interests were. I didn't want to be just stuck in one domain. I wanted to have some domain expertise, which was, let's say hardware, semiconductors, but I didn't want to be just a pure hardware person. So kind of this kind of role has sort of fit me very well in terms of where my interests are. Kind of like to, dabble in different domains, be cross-domain, and learn about different, parts of the entire business process, whether it's,
definitely.
design, engineering, or learning about your product. So I've been lucky in my career to be able to sort of learn about all those aspects. And one thing I found is that, sometimes people will not give you those opportunities. You may get those mentors, but a lot of times you have to search them out. And you have to be aggressive about it sometimes, but you just let
Yeah,
your curiosity guide you, like I'm interested in this. So when you show interest in something, when you show a passion for something, then people automatically gravitate to that person. Hey, he's interested. Let's give them a chance. And that's kind of what I've followed all through my career. So
definitely.
yeah, so then I worked at a company called Cadence Design Systems, which is still around, and they create software to design chips. And then after that, I worked for a company called Xilinx, which is a maker of what are called field programmable gate arrays. And then we got acquired by AMD, which is where I work currently. So essentially, it's been an interesting journey, a fun journey. You get to work hard, learn about a lot of things, work with some interesting people, and that's really where I am right now. So I sort of manage and lead a team of software developers where we are focused on AMD's next generation of AI chips for FPGAs and also which go into our AI PCs and so on. And so it's again it's a cross-functional role. It's engineering. You have to learn about the product management side of things, people management, and I'm essentially like a software architect right now. So where we take our what are our next generation designs and we figure out what's the fastest way to actually implement those and get them out
Yeah.
in a timely fashion. And so that's really in a nutshell been sort of my journey of the past couple of
Thank you.
decades.
Thank
Yeah.
you. So yeah, I love the insight that you gave. I'm so glad that you were able to kind of take a risk on Silicon Valley, especially during that boom. So we've seen that you've led software architecture for multiple generations, from FPGA design tools, from Cadence, as you mentioned, all the way up until AMD. So I kind of want to get into the more nitty-gritty. So how did you navigate the transition from being a deep technical engineer to becoming a technical leader or mentor? Because if anyone has said that they've not messed up leadership, that's kind of a red flag because we all know it's a very bumpy road. So yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. That's an excellent question. And I think, people say you're a born leader. Some people may have that, but I think really you train yourself. I mean, honestly. But first you have to have that courage to take that step, A lot of people are in their comfort zone, they're domain experts, so and they're phenomenal at what they do. And they don't really want to get into this job of people management, which can be messy, it can be difficult. But it's one of those things where you have to sort of first have an interest in the people that you work with, right? I mean, managing
definitely.
people is not just the technical aspect. And we have some phenomenal technologists here in the Valley, but some of them do flounder when they get to that management stage because it requires you to put on a different hat. You have to think
Yeah,
about people's motivations, how to develop their careers, what their interests are, what their strengths and weaknesses are. It's not simply like giving a task and expecting someone to finish it. You have to know,
definitely.
the right person for the right task, and also have to think about their long term, what motivates them, what keeps them happy. So those kind of aspects take a while for some people to learn. And
Yeah,
I can remember my first time as a manager. One of kind of the toughest things I had to do was to let someone go, and I took that as a personal failure. Like, oh, someone in my team has to be let go, and sometimes just realize that people are not a good fit, and they'll do better somewhere else. And what could I have done to develop them? You have to kind of learn from that, and you're not always going to get it right. But for me, that was a learning experience that you have to you have to when someone's not a right fit for your team, you kind of either position them somewhere else, or you get the right resources, or you give them the resources to grow as much as possible. And when
yeah,
that doesn't work, then you have to do what's best for them actually, as well as for your team. And that's a tough lesson that we all have to learn when I'm managing teams is to figure out who fits best where. But
definitely.
you always give people, as much communication as possible, work with them, really understand their working style, respect them fully, as we're all fully accomplished people and professionals here. And so you have to start with that basic respect, right, for people.
Yeah,
And as a manager, you would be learning from people. It's not just it's a one directional, it's two directional. Yes, sure, you have certain goals in mind, but people have tremendous like ideas and knowledge to give. Even like an intern can tell you an amazing, come up with amazing insights. So
yeah,
it's really and it goes both ways, you know. So you never stop learning, you never stop learning from people and giving people that respect. So I think it's you have to have that mindset to be successful as a leader, and lead from the front. You know, you got to start by knowing your domain. You have to develop credibility in some space, right? And that's how you get people's attention. You get their respect. And then you branch out. If you want to lead larger teams, you want to set the direction. That's how you'll do it. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, that's very helpful insight. I'm just curious to know, was people leadership something you were able to sort out, or did it kind of find you? Was it natural to you, or did you have to find it by yourself?
I had to find it by myself, right? You know, but it helps that if you talk to someone who's in a leadership position and they like you know your style and they think that you could do a good job. So you do have to sort of make yourself visible, right? But making yourself visible doesn't mean just oh look at me, put your hand up.
Yeah,
It's sort of being showing that you're a leader in terms of hey, I want to take care of this project or I want to be on the forefront of doing something, and I'm not going to ask people for direction. I'm going to go out there and figure out what I need and get help from people. So when you people see you being proactive, you're already doing the job. So they always say when you get promoted, you're getting promoted to a job that you've already been doing, right? So
exactly. Yeah,
you don't have to be a people manager to be a leader, right? You can be the go-to person if anybody wants to get something done, and you can be the person who goes around asking people, you know, I need help with this, and can I get resource for that? And you may step on some toes doing that, but that's how you establish, you know, that you can actually get this kind of a job done by working with groups and working with teams. So that's I think the best way to do it. Yeah.
definitely, definitely. So, time to get a little bit more technical. Was there a project where you felt as though your success wasn't guaranteed? Because I imagine debugging time models must actually build emotional resilience on its own. So yeah, was there a project where you felt as success wasn't guaranteed?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I mean, there are a lot of projects that you know where you given aggressive deadlines, you can't
Yeah.
make. You're not sure if you'll make them. I know when I was working back at Cadence, we were trying to come up with an entirely new feature for our customers, which just basically would allow us to, customers to sort of take the state of their design and save it. And then restart it, just like for example, give you an analogy, like you reboot your PC, it comes back
Yeah.
up with whatever state you left it in. So the same thing with the design. They wanted to sort of have multiple designs and kind of save them all at different stages and then bring them all up at different times and bring them together, but have them work as if they just never left off, right?
Right.
So it was something completely new. We hadn't done that kind of thing before, and we had an aggressive 6 month deadline. So didn't really know if we would make it. So you try and do the preparation up front as much as possible. So that's
Right.
you try and spec things out, right? It's the basic things that you do. But planning is one step, and planning is essential, but it doesn't guarantee anything. So so that's kind of like the one thing you learn as you go through that process is that as you go through things, you put checkpoints to sort of say, well, after a certain period of time, I expect to have done this much and this much.
Right.
And how do you validate? So those are the kind of like the things, the tools that you learn of creating production software, production, any kind of product, is that you have to have quality checks all the way through. And that's how you're really going to know if you're going to make it or not, right?
For
And
sure.
and then at the point where if you're not going to make it, then you actually have the data to prove why. And it doesn't come as a surprise. You don't want it to come at the last few weeks of the project and you're going to surprise
Yeah.
your team that, oh, we're not going to make, we need another 6 months. That doesn't fly, right? So
Right.
it's okay to slip schedule. That happens, but it has to be a clear established process. And that's where collaboration comes into the picture, right? So you don't want to be working in isolation. You want to be working in teams, working with your manager, with your leadership, and telling them every step of the way, this is what we were planning on doing, and this is what happened along the way, and everything is documented and clear. And that's sometimes that takes more setup and more time, but that's really
Yeah.
how you're going to sort of validate what you're doing and give visibility. The worst thing is people who sort of commit to things, but then sort of tell you at the last moment that it's not going to happen. That's I
Yeah.
think the worst for any company. And you can slip, but as long as there's an established like methodology behind it or reason behind it, I think that's the only way that's going to otherwise those mistakes could be could impact your career, could hurt you.
Definitely.
So I think that's when you take on large projects, you spec it up front, you create milestones and checkpoints along the way, and you validate as you go, and you involve people as many as you can who need to know the status of things. I mean, that's
Definitely.
basically what it is. When things are going wrong, more transparency is better than kind of trying to hide it, actually.
I
Um,
definitely agree. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's harder. It's a mindset, but once you have that mindset, you're never going to be afraid because you're doing the work and you're showing what's happening, and there'll always be obstacles that come along the way, and that any mature leadership will understand that. I mean, that's the only feedback I can give, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree. That's very helpful insight, Nader. So obviously you're leading advanced R&D, managing teams, and pushing innovation. I kind of want to know more personally, how do you balance that intensity with life outside of work? Essentially, what kind of helps you recharge outside of work?
Well, for me, it's my family. I have two young boys and my wife, so just trying to spend as much time with them as possible. And you talked earlier, that you're not going to ask about this work-life balance thing, and
Right,
it is hard. We live here in the valley. I mean, and there's a time and a place for everything. When you're in a startup, for example, you would have a different focus, right? I mean,
right.
you're going to be 24/7. You're going to try and do the 996 model that everyone talks about.
Yeah,
But there comes a time and a place where that's not like the best thing for you as a person in your family. You have to decide what that inflection point is, and everyone has a different sort of take on it. And even if you're on
right.
a startup, you can learn how to put boundaries around what you do. For instance, like I'm only going to work up to a certain point. And that's, then I have to be home and have dinner with my family, right? So you have
Yeah.
to establish those rules. People will respect them. There'll obviously maybe situations where that's not respected. And maybe
Yeah.
maybe times where you are going to be working the weekends and sprinting and all that. For me, I mean, working in a larger company, it is easier to have a bit of that balance. But obviously, when we have deadlines, we have projects and chips that have to get taped out. You're going to be full sprint to get it done. So this is the valley. You're never really off. You're always on. You're always being
Definitely.
pinged by emails, getting things. But for me, at least, I try and carve out a block of time every day, right? Few hours where I'll be with my family and they have things that need to be done, need to have dinner together, those kinds of things. You have to sort of set limits. But then, once that's over, you can go back and you can work. I mean, it's you can work after the kids are asleep, right? It's like
Yeah.
you always have to, it's just if you got to have that drive to keep on finding what makes sense for you, but you should always I don't think you really have a switch off when you're done leaving work.
Yeah,
It's kind of
definitely.
like you get certain amount of block done, and then you're kind of preparing for that. After the kids and family time is over, you're going to give yourself a couple more hours to kind of prepare
Yeah,
and do
yeah.
things for the next day. And it's just that consistency, I think, is really important. You can sprint for a long time, not the 996 model, but you may burn out, right? And then
Yeah.
what do you do, right? So you got to find that balance, and literally there's that balance. It's balance in your mind, right? Some people can work extremely long hours, but eventually everyone has to find that balance where what keeps them healthy. So for me, I need some physical activity, want to spend some time with the children, and you always have to carve out time, whether it's on a weekend or a weekday. There has to be
Definitely.
some sort of balance there. But yeah.
Definitely. That was very good advice. We'll definitely keep that in mind. So, as far as your biggest influences in your growth, either personally or professionally, who would you say that was? And also, what kind of guidance stuck with you throughout your journey?
Oh, that's a great question. So I mentioned that earlier in my career, there was some really good mentors, both at college and university,
Right.
who sort of taught me about intellectual rigor. Okay, so this is basically saying how do you sort of so this is we have this idiom kind of in engineering that you always must state your assumptions. In other words,
Yeah.
you're building something, but there's always nothing is always like 100% like accurate. There's certain error tolerance, there's assumptions built into it, but how do you establish what those assumptions are and make them clear so that when things don't work out, you can go back and recheck. So this is just from a technical standpoint, but it's kind of sort of this whole idea of first principles where you're kind of examining things from the bottom up, trying to understand what makes sense, what doesn't, and then
Right.
when you kind of know like kind of the different layers which you're using to build up a product. and what each principle, what it establishes. So there's the different tiers kind of knowledge that you use. And
Right.
so by the time you kind of, something doesn't work, you can kind of put on the different strands and know, I made this assumption at this point, it's based on this principle and so on. So that was kind of like something one of my professors taught me early on when I was doing research. In particular, when you're doing research and running experiments, and things can often go, awry. They're not what you expected. And how you understand
Yeah.
what went wrong, there's a lot of steps in between. So what he stated is always establish your assumptions every step of the way so that it's documented and you know what you did, so you can go back and route it. So that's something that I always use, especially when you're working on complex projects. That helps a lot.
Definitely.
And then the other thing was that just I think actually being part of Open and being around some of the leaders here has taught me a lot. I mean, folks here, they're just very entrepreneurial. They're very they have great insights into where the market is going and where business opportunities are. And just being around some of these people has been inspirational for me. So I would say like those have
Definitely.
been like some big influences in my life. Yeah.
Definitely. So as far as you having big influences, you've now become the big influence. Many of our students today, me included, kind of want to work into AI, chip design, or even just be part of the engineering leadership one day. So what advice would you give to young professionals who want to follow a similar path?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So again, that's it's going to be it's a massive growth field right now. Everyone needs to understand how to use AI, and, and there's multiple tiers to it, right? I mean, there's
Definitely.
one level where you want to understand the basic AI models, right? And you don't have to be an expert in it, but maybe you need to understand the basics behind it. How are these models trained? What are the different
Right.
types of models and methodologies? And then at a different level, like how do you prompt them? How do you get meaningful output from them? And really, the best way is there's one aspect is theory, and obviously if you're in school or taking a class online, whatever you're doing, you're going to get some theory. But it's actually the hands-on project experience that's really going to sort of differentiate you and solidify things in your mind. So I think the more
Right.
opportunities you get to work on projects, to work on with teams or with people who are doing things in the area that you're interested in, that's going to really be critical for your growth. And the more you do of that, the more of an edge you're going to have in this workplace. And nowadays there's not much limitation. You could do like some AI project sitting at home on your laptop. I mean, it's just it depends on your motivation and where you want to go looking for information. And it's really out there. So
Definitely.
you could have a big head start in people who are established professionals because a lot of this stuff is new, right? So you are actually on an equal footing in many ways. But
Definitely.
in general, and specifically speaking about AI and chip design, for example, I mean, chips, we are generating AI chips, but we're also using AI to design those chips. It's becoming a huge field for us, right?
Right.
So we're trying to basically like it's hard to scale up chips because human resource is limited, and it's always been a labor-intensive process in some ways. What we do is we create tools to help us simulate, to model, and so on. But with
Right.
AI, we're going to be accelerating that process massively. So all through the sort of the chip design process. So we have multiple stages of the chip design process, from what's called front-end capture all the way to the back end and
Yeah.
design closure and layout, etc. And they're going to be AI agents, which are already sort of introduced by a lot of companies to help model different stages of that process and converge the whole process. So basically, what you needed like 1,000, like 200 engineers to do before, like maybe you could do with a smart team of 20, 25, 30. And that doesn't
Definitely.
mean that job opportunities will get less. I think it'll increase the opportunities because the number of chips that you can do is going to grow, and the demand for
Yeah.
those people to man those kind of those chips and that process is going to still be there. It's just that
Right.
there might be smaller teams for each kind of chip. So um, you know, there's so many papers being published. Just read those papers. Try and get as hands-on as possible. Experiment with stuff at home. There's so many things you can try. So I think this is the time. And again, you guys coming out of college actually have an advantage in many ways because you're being introduced to these
Definitely.
fresh models, which people in established professionals sort of have their own way of doing things. It's going to take longer for them to adjust, to introduce AI into their workflows. But
Right.
you have an opportunity to actually leapfrog them. So make use of that. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was definitely taking notes as a computer science student myself. So, kind of backtracking a little bit, is there a skill that you wish you had built earlier if you were in my shoes as a younger generation?
Oh, absolutely. I think go out and talk to people, network people. I mean, with people. I mean, I think it's a underrated skill. It's really important to know how to do that. And I think when I was
Definitely.
younger, I just kind of had this mindset of, I'm just gonna stay focused on what I know and demonstrate my expertise and excellence by just going deep into what I know.
Yeah,
But you also have to have that breadth of vision, like understand how are people using technology, or what are the business cases and the use cases? What are the needs out there? What people need this technology to be used for? That's really
right.
important. And talk to people. People have like amazing insights, and it's as one person, there's no way we can know like exactly everything that's going on in the marketplace, what's happening with companies. The more people you talk to, the more information that you get. So you got to get out there, go and network, go to conferences, meet people, and it's surprising like how like different ideas can get sparked in your mind just by getting different perspectives from people. And that's, I think,
Definitely.
going to be even more important in this world of AI, right? AI may be very good at doing a lot of technical tasks. It does great creative tasks too with generative AI. But I think as humans, we still know how to put everything together in a system. We know how it works. And the more ideas that you have, the more touch points you have, that's going to make you really successful. So get out there
Definitely.
and talk to people and learn from people around you, students around you, your professors, conferences. That's, I think, the one thing that I would have done differently is network more. It just generates opportunities and ideas that would not have happened before.
Definitely. We'll definitely keep that in mind. So, looking forward now, what's kind of a goal or a dream that you have that excites you the most? Whether that's in AI EDA or something entirely different. What does the future kind of look like for you?
For me personally, I am very excited about this AI EDA space because EDA, by definition, is electronic design automation. It's literally the process of trying to automate things which people used to do manually. Okay.
Right.
And now AI is just the next level of that, right? So we're going to this world of AI agents where they'll independently plan different stages of the design process. And, as a person, eventually your goal will just be to monitor the quality of the outputs and figure out or assemble the
Right.
whole system that they work within and train each kind of AI agent to on its domain that it needs to know about. Um,
Right.
but between that final step and where we are now, there's a distance, there's a ways to go. It's quite a complex process. There's a lot of sort of physical effects that come into play and so on that need to be designed and modeled into those things. You can't just ask ChatGPT to do it, right? It's not as
Yeah,
simple as that. So,
definitely.
so I'm excited about the fact that there's this new wave, and we're going to be able to accelerate our chip design process and 10x our engineers to be like 5 times and 10 times more productive. Now that's the dream. We're
Definitely.
not there yet, but we will, I think, get there. So I feel like this is towards like towards the end of, not the end of my career, but sort of as I'm coming to that phase, I'm really excited that this is an incredible new frontier for me to explore. So,
Definitely.
so
Definitely.
from professionally, definitely, I think that I'm excited about that. And then looking further down the road, I mean, I would love to continue to have some impact on, young people coming into this industry or any industry, and sort of sharing my expertise. So I think those are kind of the two things that I'm excited about.
Definitely. Definitely. So, as far as success, how would you say that you define success, whether it's professionally or personally?
Professionally, I think for me, it's really just about establishing respect of people in your field. Okay. Success isn't necessarily having a fancy title or a big position. Sometimes those are byproducts of success. It's not the most important thing, actually. It's, when you have that personal satisfaction that you've achieved something and you've built something, you created something, that's, I think, way more important than anything else you'll ever do. And you will get so much respect from people when you do that. I mean, that's to me, that's professional success.
Definitely.
So I think that's for me, and and the other things may follow from that. In other words, the titles or the success may follow from that. But having that, sort of that core, that look, this is what I've achieved or accomplished, or I've created something, I've created a product, or it's being some tool is being used by people, some technology is being employed. Having impact, I think, is to me professional success. So
Definitely.
so you create something, but it has to be something that's useful, that people are going to use, that's going to have an impact. So I think that's for me, that's professional success. And personal success is really, it's about, what values can you impart to the next generation? I mean, that's really for me, as a father, it's just really what can you teach your children? What example can you set for them? You know, a lot of the times as a father, it's not even about what you tell them. It's what you show
Right.
them. It's what you do. And that's sometimes we have to remind ourselves, wow, you know, they're actually watching everything that you do. It's not really, I can say whatever I want, but what I do is just as impactful or even more sometimes. So for me, you know, success would be if I can see, you know, my children taking in some of the values that we care about as human beings, what we care about, and that would be that's you know that's a huge thing. If that you know if you can influence someone, whether it's your family or someone in that way, yeah.
Definitely. That was really great to hear. So, Nader, I just wanted to thank you so much for your time today. Your work has seriously shaped the performance of chips, powering devices across the world, and it's also very inspiring to hear on how you're helping drive the future of the semiconductor design. So, we can't wait to see you on November 8th from 4 to 5:30 at the unscripted session. Hopefully, you're able to be there a little bit earlier than the panel, so we can promise you that there will be caffeine to fuel you the entire day.
Very
And
important,
yeah,
yeah.
and yeah, thank you so much for having this conversation with us.